Hello there, everyone. I hope you're well. What we're doing today is a teaching video. This is going to be a little bit of an advanced tarot reading video, and we're going to be looking at how when you look at multiple cards, how they can make phrases or how they can make sentences for you, how you can read cards together. I know that a lot of people, when they first start reading cards, they might pull a card every day to see how that's going to play out in their lives, and that's a great way to actually practice and to get to know your deck. Even if you've been doing this a while, it's still a great way to get to know a new deck. But this is a little bit more advanced. This is giving you the idea how to combine cards and tell what those cards are trying to say to you, because sometimes one card just isn't enough for the details that we need for an answer. Okay? So the first card combination that we're going to look at is going to be one that's pretty common in a lot of spreads. It'll be sort of like the main significator will be the first card, and that'll kind of set the tone. Some people will choose their significator if they're asking about a certain thing. They'll choose an appropriate card for that significator. I generally don't. I generally let Spirit bring that significator out. Sometimes it gives me a different look at things or a different perspective. And so I'm open to that because I trust Spirit. I've been working with them a long time doing these readings. And so I'm open to letting go of the wheel and letting them handle that. That's not for everybody. And so if you want to choose your significator, please know, no judgment. There's no wrong way to read cards. So you just have to set your intentions. What do cards and their positions mean to you as you're going through? So one of the ways that we can combine cards is we can have our main significator. And so say that you've got a main significator here, and then your next card will be what we call a cover card. Okay, so main significator, cover card. So you can see why it's called the cover card right there. Our main significator is going to give us a ballpark. What is this about? What are we talking about with this reading? Okay, the cover card is going to be something that either assists in making this card successful or causes friction and brings an obstacle to this card being successful. Okay, and it can go either way, just depending. So you just want to kind of look at things and see what comes out to you as you're reading those cards. So I'll give at least one example of what this might look like. Maybe I'll give 2 or 3 examples here. And so this first example, and I'm just choosing cards randomly, our significator card is the Page of Bows. Or in our traditional tarot, we might say the Page of Wands. Let me see if I hide my face, will it focus a little better? Either way, so we have the Page of Bows is our significator card. So pages, we know pages are always messengers. Remember, this is a little bit more advanced. So if you don't know the basics, I might talk a little over your head here. But we know that pages are messengers, so we know that this is some kind of messenger. Well, it's a page of bows, so that tells us what this message is about, at least a ballpark. We know that with bows, this is going to be a message that has to do with passion or enthusiasm or travel. One of those 3 are the main 3 themes that come up for bows or for wands. And I'm just using, by the way, technical meanings in this video or in this series, whatever I end up making it. And I'm using these technical meanings just to keep things simple. I'm not layering in some of my psychic meanings just because that's going to complicate things. We're not looking at how to read psychically. We're looking at how to make phrases and sentences with card combinations. Okay, so we have our significator. We know that this is talking about some kind of message, about something that makes us feel inspired or enthusiastic, maybe about travel. This could be about passion as well. Okay, bows, wands, that's that fiery energy, very passionate, enthusiastic, you know. Okay, so we have that as our significator. Now we have our crossing card, which is the Blasted Oak. Now this would be similar to a tower in a more traditional deck, but you kind of get the picture here. Somebody is coming out of a place that did feel comfortable suddenly and unexpectedly. Okay, and this is what is crossing our Page of Bows or our Page of Wands. So when we have basically the Tower card, or the Blasted Oak in this case, crossing that, this tells us that this Blasted Oak situation is actually either helping with this message to come out, or it is blocking that message to come out. And so this is where we really feel in to see where is it going. We look at the psychic way that this relates, because it can go either way. I could read this actually either way. And if I had a person in front of me in context, I would choose which way I would read it. But since I don't have a person in front of me in context, I will tell you, I could read this either. This combination could say that somebody's had a shakeup in their life that has caused them to bring you a message that is sort of a go-ahead. It's a positive message about something you like to do that makes you feel inspired. Maybe you really, really, really wanted to take a trip with somebody and they were saying, no, I've got too much work to do, I can't do it. And then they get laid off. That would be a Tower or a Blasted Oak. They get laid off and then they say, guess what? I can take that trip with you. I have the time now. I don't know if they would. They might want to spend that time job hunting, or maybe they just need a break. But so we could read it like that, like something that has suddenly shaken somebody up, has given them the motivation to come to you with a positive message about something you want to do that has you fired up. Okay? Now, the other way that we can read this is that maybe somebody was going to come to you and maybe they were planning on saying, or maybe they even did say something positive. Oh, I can go along with you on that trip, for example. But now they have this big shakeup in their life. And so now they have some friction. Maybe they said this and now their life is shaken up and now they have to figure out, is it wise for me to do that or not? And this could cause some conflict for them about whether they can live up to what they told you they would do. Okay? So that's one example of how we would look at a significator and a cover card. And I mean, any of these examples that come up are just random, totally, because these are all just for teaching purposes. I've been reading the tarot for the public since 2012. There's not too many card combinations I haven't seen before. So I'm not stressing about what cards to use as examples. Whatever comes out will be fine. All right, so our next significator, we're not going to do reversals today because that's going to complicate things. But our next significator is our Six of Stones. And in this deck, it's labeled as Exploitation. In a normal deck, this would be about an even give and take. So the deck is also going to make a difference on your context and how you interpret your cards. But this is the Six of Swords. This is talking about a situation where either you or your querent, if you have somebody asking you questions and you're looking at cards to help them, but then in that case, that would be your querent who is in a situation where they feel like they're being taken advantage of or they're being exploited. If you're looking for yourself, this would be you being exploited. Okay, so that's our significator card. That would be the situation that we're talking about. The cover card that comes up with this one comes up with the King of Arrows or the Kingfisher. Okay, so this tells me when this comes up as a cover card to that significator, this tells me who's doing the exploiting, who is taking advantage of my person, of the person that I'm reading for, whether it's myself or somebody else. Well, who's taking advantage of them is somebody with a King of Arrows personality. All right, so basically this would be like King of Swords in another deck. So this would be somebody logical. Maybe they even come off cold, even though they do have feelings. They don't let feelings influence their decisions. And so this is somebody like that that's very cold, analytical. They're very bottom line oriented, and they may be taking advantage of your person sitting across the table from you, or maybe they're taking advantage of you. Maybe this is a situation where they're not paying you what you deserve because they're very bottom line oriented and they may not feel like they can afford to pay you what you deserve. Or if this is somebody who is very analytical and you're in a personal relationship with them, then it may be, it doesn't always have to be, but it may be that if they're not learning something from you or if they're not gaining something from your interactions, they may not see the purpose in having those interactions. Okay? And that could be making the person feel, whoever you're reading for, feel exploited and taken advantage of, because this person isn't just a friend that you can talk to about everything. They want to hear about very specific things that they can learn from, or things that they can actually, that will actually benefit them in some way. And it's not that they're mean or anything. This is just the way their personality has them wired. They don't see the point otherwise. Where people who are in the other suits, strong in the other suits, might not see the point of having a conversation if you can't connect emotionally as well. That this is how this person is. Okay? They can seem very distant. All right, let's do one more example. And so what we're looking at next for our significator is the moon on water. This will be similar to a moon card in another deck. And this talks about illusions. If you think about, walking through the woods at night, you know that the shadows are going to look odd. They're not going to be to scale of whatever it is the shadow is of, whether it's a tree or a bush or, a deer, whatever. Okay. So it talks about illusions. All right. So that's our main idea that we're talking about here. And now we have the Ace of Vessels in reverse. Now, isn't this interesting? This is really interesting. So with our significator being some kind of illusion, some kind of mystery, sometimes it's about the subconscious. Sometimes it is. But right now we're just going with the meaning of illusions just to keep things simple. And then we have the Ace of Vessels showing up in reverse. Well, we aren't going to do reversals, are we? I don't want to. Although it just fits so well with this, I kind of do. Let's look at this both ways. Okay, so say you've got a cover that's the Ace of Vessels in reverse over the moon card, which is right side up. Ace of Vessels in reverse is somebody showing you their true colors, or this can also be somebody showing you their true talents and their true abilities. And so with this covering the moon card, this is saying whatever it is that is being kept hidden is coming to light, whether that's somebody's talents and abilities, or maybe if you're in a dating situation, they might not want you to know that they have a lot of debt or something like that. This would be that comes out, that information comes out, where before you just didn't know. Now the information is coming to the surface with this cover card. Okay, so that's how that would impact this. Is it benefiting it, or is it causing friction? I guess that depends how you feel about it. Like in the situation where if this was a dating thing and I saw this come up for somebody, the other person across the table from me would probably be very happy to know that information as they're evaluating how far they want to go in that situation. The person who is trying to keep that information down, this might be some friction. They may not really be very thrilled about the truth coming out. The truth is coming out, whether they're thrilled about it or not. The question is, whose perspective are you looking at and how is this? So there's that. And that's why I say the cards are just mirrors of the energy. They aren't making anything happen, but they're mirrors of what's going on that we can look at. Kind of like, they can help you see your blind spot. Kind of like if you're in the bathroom and you just have a single mirror so you can see the front of you, or if you turn sideways, you might see a little bit of your side. If you have that extra mirror that you can hold up behind yourself, then you can also see the back, see how your hair looks in the back, and all of that good stuff. So cards are like this. They help you see the part that you can't see through your own experience. They help you see the blind spot. They can, if you ask the right questions. Okay, so let's look at just two cards right next to each other and how they would form. And you can do this with 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards, 5 cards. You don't have to make just a phrase. You can make a whole sentence like this. So the 2 cards that we're looking at right now, they're both bows. The first card that comes up, we're doing just right sides ups. starts to be the Seven of Bows. This is clearance. This is getting rid of baggage. Sometimes this is cleaning house. It is moving things out that don't belong, whether we're talking about out of the subconscious or out of the house. In this case, I'm going to say out of the house. Things are getting cleared out. We've got a little burn pile in the back there. Those of you like me who grew up in the country, you know that you take the dead branches and you put them on a burn pile and then you burn them very carefully because you don't want to set the whole county on fire. And then our second card that's coming in right next to it. So this is not a cover card. This is just like a very short line of cards, okay? 2 cards right next to each other. So if you lay them on the table, they're going to look something like that. They're going to be right next to each other, all right? So when you've got the 4 of Bows coming up right next to the 7 of Bows, which talks about clearance. Remember, we're clearing things out. 4 of Bows talks about home or family or feeling at home, okay? And so this could, and also this talks about celebration a lot of times, family celebrations, which I have opened up in my years of reading to, could be tribe, doesn't have to be blood family. But when we've got these 2 cards sitting next to each other, what this screams to me is cleaning the house for a celebration. You've got people coming over, cleaning the house. So that's what that card combination would mean, just 2 right next to each other. Okay, let's see if we want to add a third card. Let's see what the next card would have to add to this line, because you can add as many cards as you want to a line. The more cards you add, the more details you get, the more complicated it is. If you're still new to reading, you may not want to add too many cards to a line because it might be overwhelming to put all of those thoughts together. All right, so I would caution against it when you're new, but as you get more skilled and more quick with the short lines, then you can add the long lines and get more of those, more of that specific information. So let's say now, oh, that's interesting. We have the 4 of Stones. Oh, we're not going to do reversals. We're going to do right sides up. Excuse me, I keep forgetting. So 4 of Stones talks about shelter. Okay, so this is really interesting how this came out. So we're cleaning the house because we've got a big celebration coming, and people are going to be taking shelter at the house. So not only do we probably have a celebration coming to the house, maybe somebody is getting married and so there's a celebration in the backyard or whatever, you know. Some people do receptions right there at home if they've got big enough places. So there could be a celebration right there at home. Well, this card now with the shelter card coming up after that says not only do we have the celebration at home, but some people are going to be staying, spending the night. You know? And so cleaning up and clearing out now becomes, maybe it's not just about cleaning the house, maybe it's about tidying up the guest bedroom so somebody has a place to sleep, or making sure that the fold-out sofa in the living room is in good shape. You know, whatever the situation is. Maybe you're just putting air mattresses down in the living room, but still this would be not only cleaning the house, but also making sure it's ready for the celebration, probably a family celebration or a tribe celebration, and for people to take shelter there afterwards. Maybe this is a big celebration where you already know people are going to be drinking. You don't want them to get behind the wheel, so you're making the house ready for people to crash out there until they're in good enough shape to actually drive themselves home. So you see how that made a whole little sentence there? And we could keep adding cards and keep adding to that sentence if we wanted to, but that gives you the idea. So we'll do at least one more of these as an example. Let's take a peek here. All right, so let's say, interesting. So here we have the Sun card, or the Sun of Life in this deck. And the Sun card just talks about light, clarity, empowerment. There's a lot of symbolism in the Sun card. And then we have the Eight of Vessels. And the Eight of Vessels talks about walking away from something because it's left us depleted or exhausted. So, if you wanted to take this super literally, you could say that somebody was laying out getting some sun. When I was a kid, we used to lay out with baby oil in the sun because we wanted a big tan fast. And then maybe they got a little too much sun. It might have been overwhelming, may have exhausted them or depleted them. And so now they went away from being in the sun. In other words, they would have gone into the house or into somewhere where they're out of the sun. They're going into the shade in one way or another. So you could read it actually very literally like that. This could be a sentence about somebody catching too much sun and now it's making them sunsick. Or maybe this could be talking about somebody trying to avoid a heat stroke. Maybe they're not feeling good because remember, this card talks about feeling exhausted or depleted from something that we're walking away from. What are we walking away from? We're walking away from the sun card. Maybe somebody's getting too hot. Maybe somebody's fixing to have a heat stroke, and so they're getting in the house so that they can make sure that doesn't happen. Or a sunburn, either one. Okay? So let's see what our next card is and see how this sentence or phrase, I would say this is a sentence. We've got what's going on and then we've got the action. We're getting some sun and now we are leaving the sun. We're walking away from the sun. So that's pretty much a sentence. Let's see if we're going to add anything to it. Okay, so what we're adding to this row is the stag. So now we have 3 cards down. We have the sun, we have the Eight of Vessels or the Eight of Cups, and we have the stag. And so when the stag is coming in at the end of this line, the stag is telling me that walking away from the sun or getting out of the sun is the responsible thing to do. It could say that. Also, though, you would want to listen to this one intuitively because having that stag added on there could also be that there's somebody that's responsible that came out and said, you've been in the sun too long. I need you to get in the house. They could be responsible for somebody taking the action to get out of the sun because the stag is somebody who has a lot of responsibility and who uses it well. Okay, so this could be about somebody coming out of the sun because it's the responsible thing to do, or this could be somebody else telling this person, you need to get out of the sun, and they are taking that responsibility of making sure that person does that. Okay, so there's a couple of ways that that actually could play out, and that's going to depend on context, and it's also going to depend on how you feel into that psychically, but you can see here that we got a nice sentence out of that. Now, let's pull 3 more cards. This is going to be our second example of this. We're going to start with the first 2, and then we'll add the third one later. So, our first 2 cards, we're starting off with the 3 of Bows. In this deck, this is called Fulfillment. 3 of Bows talks really about making long-term plans. This card kind of implies, because of the split in the path here, that you might be at a pivot point where you have to decide which way you want to go for the long term. But in general, it talks about making long-term plans. Okay, so that's the first part of our sentence or phrase. And we have the hooded man, which would be the hermit in a traditional deck. So we have the hooded man showing up here. Well, the hooded man, we know him as somebody who is thinking things over, who's assessing. Where am I right now? Where do I want to be? So it fits really well with our pivot point here. Which way do I want to go for the long term? The hooded man is really considering, and he's taking the time to consider without anybody around to influence his decision. So when you have these 2 in a row, you know that somebody here is making a decision about what way they want to go for the future, and they're taking that decision very seriously. They're taking some time alone to really consider. They're not rushing into that decision. Okay? So let's look at our last card and see where this sentence ends up going with 3 cards. And those of you who know my reading style, I normally read with 5 cards, just about anything and everything. I normally put 5 cards down. But since this is just a teaching and I just want you to get the basic concept, we're just going with 2 or 3. So the third card that we have down is our Knight of Vessels showing up in reverse. So Knight of Cups in reverse. All right. So we have somebody at a pivot point. They need to think things over. They're taking the time to do that seriously. And when they get done thinking things over, here's the thing. They're realizing, feeling kind of skeptical about this relationship that I'm thinking over. Because this is Vessels, so it's usually some kind of relationship. Doesn't have to be romantic, but this person is feeling skeptical with this card in reverse. Okay? So somebody's at a pivot point here. This is the sentence or the idea that we're getting. Maybe this is more of a paragraph. Somebody's at a pivot point here. They're taking the time to understand where they want to go from here so they know what way they want to go on this pivot point. And they're realizing they're pretty pessimistic. They maybe even be feeling pretty pessimistic about either way that seems to be open on the path. They may actually even be coming up with, because of that pessimism, a whole complete new path that maybe nobody else sees around them yet. Okay, so that's that. Now let's look at card combinations if we want to clarify something. There's a couple of ways that I like to do that. So you can clarify a tarot card with other tarot cards, and that's pretty common. You see that a lot. Okay, or you can clarify tarot cards with some other kind of divinatory tool. So you can clarify tarot cards with Lenormand cards, or with Kipper cards, or with runes. All right? In this case, I'm going to show you how I might clarify a tarot card with tarot cards. And then I'm also going to show you how I might clarify one with Lenormand cards. And Lenormand cards read a little bit differently. So if you also use Lenormand cards, then you may find this something that is useful for you. Hopefully. Hopefully. All right. And if you don't, then I'm sure you'll find it useful for you if you decide to ever get into Lenormand. And I like Lenormand because compared to tarot, the Lenormand can get really specific on you, where the tarot does not get as specific. Sometimes it can be very high in the sky type of viewpoint, where the Lenormand is more the nitty gritty. Okay, so I mean, I can get very specific with the tarot too, but it's easier to get specific with the Lenormand. So the first card that we pulled out here, we got the Four of Bows. So this is a celebration. So I might wonder, if I just pulled this card, I might wonder, well, what is this a celebration about? Or even if I had this card in some kind of spread, I might want to clarify something about this card. And so what I would do if I was going to use the tarot to clarify, I like to use 3 cards to clarify something, because that gives Spirit a chance to give me a little bit more specific information so I don't go from vagueness to vagueness. I like to go to something more specific. So we know that we're talking about, with that Four of Wands, we're talking about immediate family, or we're talking about home, or we're maybe even talking about closer tribe members. Okay, so what about them? Let's clarify that. So we're going to clarify that with 3 cards. Let's see what shows up. Once again, I'm just doing this very randomly. It's not like I'm setting up any situations here. And I'm not asking about any particular thing. These are all for demonstration purposes only. So for our clarification, we have a row of 3. And so we start off with the page. Well, let's do right side up for all of these guys. So we're starting off with the Page of Bows. So this says there's some kind of message. Well, look, this is also bows. So this is message about something that makes somebody feel inspired, enthusiastic, maybe passionate. And this is some kind of message that has to do with this home, family, or group, and possibly a celebration between them. Now we have the Ace of Vessels. Oh, this is so funny. The Ace of Vessels talks about a new love. And if we're talking about a family situation or even a tribal situation, this can be a new baby that we love. Could be a new house that we just love, actually, too. It's so far in the context that we have on the table. But this is saying that there's some kind of message about either a new home or maybe a new baby around the home. And the celebration has to do with whatever this new thing is. All right. Now, we have an interesting card as our last card for a clarification. This is a Six of Stones, Exploitation. So this would tell me, now this kind of nails it down for me actually, because when we have a mortgage on our home, we're paying a lot of interest. So maybe we're paying for that home 2 or 3 times, maybe more. I don't even know. And so that is kind of an exploitation, really. I'm sure the banks think it's fair. Maybe they don't think it's fair enough for them. I don't know. But that can feel very exploitative. So let's say that we're having this celebration at home between people that we care about. This really says the celebration is about the idea that we have some good news about something new around exploitation. And so, obviously, we don't celebrate exploitation. That would probably come in upside down. And actually, I think it did. But for this purpose, we're going to say that we're celebrating at home because we have some new news that the mortgage is paid off. This is an end to the exploitation. And this is a beginning with this card of a life without having to deal with the exploitation. It's a beginning of life where there's some ease in the budget, where this person or this couple or whatever is not having to pay the mortgage anymore. It's paid off. Okay? So, see how that would clarify our celebration at home. This would be somebody having a party because the title is fully in their name with no lien on it anymore. Okay? So that's one version of an example of how we could clarify things. And you could clarify that card, like I said, if you pulled only that Four of Wands, you could clarify only that Four of Wands and come up with a lot of information there. Or if that Four of Wands was a part of a spread that we had already, whether we had our significator and our cover card or whether we had a lineup of cards, you could still clarify just the one card. And in fact, if I'm going to clarify something, I'll usually, if I've got a lineup and I'm feeling confused about a card, I'll clarify that card. I don't clarify the whole lineup. You could, but I think it would be confusing. And if I have another card, say I've got another card out of that 5 that I've put down, typically, that I'm feeling confused about, I'll clarify the first one. If I'm still confused about that one then I'll clarify that one. All right? So we're going to do one more and clarify it just as an example. And then after that, I'm going to show you how you can clarify with the Lenormand as well. So let's say that our card that we want to clarify is the Ace of Bows. And the Ace of Bows talks about communication going back and forth. In this deck, it does. And so maybe I want to know, well, what's that communication about? Or who is that communication with? What are we talking about there? What kind of communication is this? So maybe I just want to know anything Spirit can tell me about that. And so I'm going to pull my 3 clarifiers again. And generally for my 3 clarifiers, if I'm clarifying one card, I'll kind of put that like in an arch down below the regular card or an arch above, depending on where my space is. So it'll act like a line making up one idea generally, but it'll create an arch. Oh, and also when you're reading cards together, say that you have a surface and you run out of space, you really wanted to put 5 cards in a row, but your table or your surface only allowed you to put 3 cards, and so you finished off the row down below or up above. Guess what? No, you didn't. What you did was you just created another row, and Spirit will treat it as another row, and they will probably start working on a whole other idea for you rather than a continuation of the idea like you were hoping to get. So that's something to keep in mind. It's something I learned the hard way several years ago, and it's just something that has stuck with me. All right, so going back to the idea of clarifying our Ace of Arrows, this idea of communication going back and forth. What can we tell? What can we see about this communication? Okay, now this is interesting. So we know a little bit about what this conversation is about now, because first of all, we have the King of Bows, who's our adder in this deck. So this would also be like a King of Wands. And in this deck, you can see these snakes are really, they're fighting to be top dog. That's not the sophisticated word I was looking for, but they're fighting to be top dog. They're having power struggles, basically. And we have the Mirror card, which would be kind of like, in another deck, it would be kind of like Judgment. It doesn't mean that to me. To me, the Mirror card in this deck talks about this idea of looking for what am I good at, what are my strengths, but also looking for simultaneously who would appreciate those strengths, who would pay me well for what I'm good at, or who would it be good for me to be in a relationship with because they would appreciate what I bring to the table. Okay? Either one of those contexts, but it really talks about that full dynamic of what am I good at and where can I plug what I'm good at in and get what I need back out of that situation, whether it's work or a relationship. And then we have the Shaman showing up in reverse, which basically says, man, I'm having trouble doing that. Having trouble finding that right, perfect place, having trouble maybe even figuring out what am I good at? What will people appreciate about me? And part of that comes back to this idea of somebody wants dominance or somebody wants superiority. And so when we have this idea that there's communication going back and forth, well, what is this communication about? This communication is about there's somebody that is trying to really tell somebody what they're good at or what they're not good at, as this person is trying to figure it out. But guess what? It's not really getting anywhere. Because rather than this person having the freedom to figure out what they're good at and where they would be appreciated, we've got this other power player coming in and trying to force this other person into a peg that they just don't fit into, or as a peg into a hole. And so it's going nowhere. And this is what the conversation is like. So this may be a conversation between a couple of friends. This could be somebody that, say that their wife is really trying to get them to pursue a career that would pay them a lot more than what they're doing now. But it's something that their heart just is not into. They would just hate it. And so this would be a conversation about that, how that's not getting anywhere. Or this could be something where maybe a boss at work is trying to tell somebody how to do something when that other person really is still figuring out how to do it. And whatever the boss is saying, they don't really have all the information. And so it's getting nowhere. And so this is that conversation about that with somebody else. Okay? So we got all kinds of clarification about this conversation. See, you can get really specific even with the tarot. All right? But we're going to look at the Lenormand as well. And we're going to take our same two examples that we took out of the tarot for what do we want clarification on, and look at the Lenormand for the clarification. And so this is going to be a little bit different. And it'll be interesting to see if we get the same outcome or different outcomes. So Lenormand cards usually, not always, are smaller. You can see how small this is in my hand than the tarot cards. There's less of them in the deck, but you never read one Lenormand card by itself that doesn't give you the meaning that you want from the deck. You always read two Lenormand cards and the relationship between those two, or you can read a combination of more than two and look at the relationships that way as well, in a bigger way, and get a bigger picture. So for this demonstration, we're going to start off with two to clarify. I'm not sure if I really want to go more than that with the Lenormand. We'll see. But the first thing that we're clarifying is we're clarifying this Page of Bows, this message about something that makes our eyes light up, that makes us feel enthusiastic, passionate, inspired. And let's see what the Lenormand can tell us about this message, or maybe even about this messenger. Oh, do I want a third card? We're going to go with the third card. Can you tell? I'm not even reading for a person, and I'm just loving these cards. I just love to read. Okay, so if we're clarifying this dope, let's just look at the first two first, and then I'll add the third one in. So Lenormand, we have to have two to have a meaning. So the first two cards that we have the Scythe, which talks about things happening suddenly, quickly. Sometimes it's a quick cut, but in this case, it's just something happening suddenly. And we have the heart, and you can see that there's the shell there in the shape of the heart on the rock at the beach. Okay, so this would be, now remember, what are we clarifying? We're clarifying this page that has a message of enthusiasm, passion, inspiration, okay, or travel. And so this would talk about that it's sudden with the Scythe. It's a sudden message about love, or possibly even a sudden message about a honeymoon. Could be, because remember that the Page of Bows, it has travel associated with it. But I don't think it's a honeymoon. Don't think it's a honeymoon. Why? Because the third card that I pulled for this Lenormand clarification comes up as the stork. Okay, so now my clarification, my relationship is between the heart card and the stork card. Love child. Can we say love child? Now the stork talks about upgrades of all kinds, but in this case, because the heart is close to it, I would say we probably are looking at a love child. And what's going on here? Well, we had the Scythe. We know that this is sudden. It's a sudden message about love. Well, what kind of love? It's a sudden message about a love child that we're getting in. That's why I don't think this has to do with travel. Or maybe the love child was conceived during travel. But that doesn't have to be just because this is the Page of Wands. The Page of Wands could just be saying, oh, there's a message that brings a lot of excitement. Well, what's the message about? It's a sudden message. And with it being sudden, it may even be a surprise, at least to one person. There's a sudden message about a love child. So see how that clarified? So let's clarify with the Lenormand a card that talks about a conversation, that Ace of Bows. All right. So when I clarify this one, let's see, are we going to use 2 cards or 3 cards? Did you see how that third card made that really interesting? And it really got it a lot more specific than it had been before. That's what I like about the Lenormand. They can really like pin it down, baby. All right. So let's see. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, we're going to use 3. Okay, so what comes up is the tree. And we also have the chickens, which is the birds. This is generally going to be more about gossip, okay? And the tree has to do with like the family tree generally. Can also have to do with something that lives a long time. But in this case, I think it's the family tree, and you'll see why here in a second. So we have a conversation here, and this conversation that is going on has to do with some gossip about somebody in the family. Okay? And then our third card that we're bringing in is the woman. Okay? So this would be combined with the chicken card or the bird card. This is gossip about a woman who is in the family. Okay? And so this communication that's happening is actually a conversation that can be gossip about a woman in the family, but also the tree can talk about health. And so it could be gossip about her health. Maybe people are speculating about her health, but it's still about a woman in the family. Either way. Okay. All right. So those are some examples of clarifying with the Lenormand. So you get the idea that there's just all kinds of ways that you can clarify. If I want something that's more specific, I might clarify with the Lenormand, but also the tarot can get me pretty specific. I like to use the Lenormand more for questions about where should I point my career next? What kinds of things should I major in college for the best results throughout my life? Things like that you want. The more specific answers, the better. And the tarot I just use for other general questions. And like I said, I can get pretty specific with the tarot too. But that gives you an idea about how you can combine cards and come up with ideas and different circumstances in which you would do that. So I hope that you guys get a lot of good information out of this video that you can take and use and practice and play with. And I would love to have some comments down below for you guys telling me things that you found as you've played. If you have different perspectives, if you're somebody who's been reading a long time, if you have a different perspective on how you can use some of these ideas, those are welcome too. So any kind of comments. Of course, remember, put a thumbs up if you feel like you benefited from this, and share it with somebody else who might like to know a little bit more about how to read their cards. Everyone have a great day. Peace out.